Okay, so now it's streaming. Let me tell this to stop auto pausing. I'll just hope it doesn't pause on me again. Keenan's asking if you can use Visual Studio Code instead of PyScripter. You can use Notepad if you want to. I'm showing PyScripter, which is a great Python IDE, but you can use whatever Python IDE you want to use, or Notepad, or whatever. There may be some differences between depending on what you're using, but you can use whatever you want to use. I won't be able to address the differences is the main thing because I will be using PyScripter. It's really annoying that it keeps going to sleep, but it wakes up quickly. I'm gonna go ahead and turn my webcam off since I wanted to turn it on to show you that I was using the Raspberry Pi was. And let's see if we can connect to this remotely to do a little remote Python. So I'll put the link in here. So one thing about setting up the chat. Here's the documentation. And for PyScripter on doing remote Python, you have to set it up for SSH connection, which I have to put that in the server. I've done this before. Let me see if I can do this again. So we need to, I wonder if I can make this text bigger. Is it just, wrong button. No, that doesn't. All right, let me try one. Tools, options, editor options. There it is. We'll change my font. I'm going to go with Cascadia Code, and we'll go with 14, 16. There we go. Nice and big, so it's easy to see. There's some questions here. Let me just see. Link for PyScripter. Okay, yeah, just a second. I'll get you the link for PyScripter. There's the link to download off SourceForge. You can, I recommend downloading the installer, but you can download the portable version instead if you'd rather. Yes, I'm here. Oh, I can bring up this on the other window so you can see it here too. Let's go to the page. So I'm going to be running this. The instructions here are actually for the for Windows. Let me just make sure I can connect to the Raspad real quick. So I'll open up a terminal window and get the IP address on the Raspberry Pi. Where'd my keyboard go? Oh, got too many keyboards in front of me. All right, I need to. For some reason, either I'm typing it wrong or I have a bad keyboard. It's dropping keys. All right. 192.168.83. 183. So I'll try and connect to that. SSH. 192.168. It's not working. All right, so I'm going to show you this. I'm not going to do the Raspberry Pi, unfortunately. Maybe I can get that for the second half because I can't get the. It's not the SSH isn't working on this one. I knew it was set up on the other one, but the basics of what you can do though is there in the how to do it is here. It's just I have to set up the SSH on the remote machine, and you won't be able to see that, so that'll be really boring. I will go ahead and bring up the Python book that we're working through here, and I will put the link for this in the chat as well, so that you can grab it if you would like to follow along from there. If you do have any questions about working with Python, go ahead and put them in the question panel, though, and I will do my best to answer them for you. Nope, that's why that's not working. So last time we went through some of the, I think we got into flow control, if statements, and talked about how you use the indentation in Python to indicate a block. So the if statement these lines only execute because if the if statement is true. If spam is less than 5, then those lines are executed. If you don't use the blocks, then you'll get an error message, or it won't execute the way you expect it to. So yes, sorry, there are some Olympic spoilers that popped up on the screen for a second there. Here's the example of a while loop. You see people do this a lot, the while true, which is a loop that repeats forever. And then you have something inside the loop that causes it to break out. I personally haven't gone with the while true breakout very often. Usually I try to have some sort of condition that breaks it out with, so while this condition is false, continue doing this until the condition is true, and then we'll stop. But you can do it either way. So let's go on to functions today. So in functions, you define a function that you want to do something that you can then call repeatedly. So in this case, they're defining hello as printing out hello 3 different ways. And then each time you call hello, it will display that. Hitting the wrong key here. There it is. So this one here is defining a main function, which is kind of a best practice for more complex Python applications. We're going to just simplify this. There's a little comment block there. So we're going to define, we'll say hello. And then you use the colon to indicate you're going into a block. And we say print. Greetings. print I print nice. And then we go out of the block, and now we're in the main block. Let me say hello. I don't know what I have weird about this machine, but that is I bet you I know what it is. Yeah, I have the scaling on. That would require rebooting to fix that. Usually that box is is not so tall, but because I have the scaling set to 350%, it's going off the top of the screen. So I'm gonna go ahead and run this one here just with the one time calling hello. And we can see down here in the output window that it displayed all three, but I can of course call this multiple times. Well, that was useful. All right, well, we'll start to go to a different program now. Not sure why that failed on me. Get this PDF after the class. So I can't give you the PDF of it. I mean, I guess I could, but the easiest way would be just to download go to the site. But I'll see about getting a PDF posted with this as well. One of the things where procedures or functions become more useful, subprograms, whatever you want to call them, is when you can pass parameters to them, though. So we're going to say hello, and then we'll pass a parameter of name. And in this one, we'll say print hello plus name. And so now we can pass in the name of who we want to say hello to. So if we call hello now, hello Jim, and hello summer camp, then that will, oops, I should put a space there, right? Turn around again. And now I see hello Jim, hello summer camp. So we're going to do a guess a number game because that is a nice simple game to do. We import random. So import is how you tell Python that you want to use another library. Random is a library that has random number support in it. And we're going to define get answer. I wonder if I can change this. Let me see if I can real quick. One second here. I'm going to try to switch this to a instead of being because it's running in a virtual machine and it's got this weird aspect ratio set on it is why it's behaving oddly. So I'm going to see if I can get it to switch that. Give me just 1 second here. Otherwise, that's a little annoying with the big window that pops up. And I will file a bug report on that and see if we can get it fixed. in a future release. 4.1 maybe. No way. Doing it. Why is it display settings? Oh, let's do that. Jeff, get tensor. I don't know why that's working that way, but I'll just deal with it, I guess. Oh, I need to put the colon here. So we're defining a procedure here, get answer, that is, we're going to pass an answer number, and we'll have some if answer number equals, double equals 1. Then we'll say return elif. And then we'll do a final return. Sure. Oops, it is. Oops, wrong button. Yeah, oh, I have the colon there. There we go. And so now if we call that with the say R equals random, oops, not that, rand int 1, 2, we'll just do 4. So it has a more likely chance. Then we'll say fortune equals get answer R, right. Fortune. All right, so what this program does, I'll just walk through this now that I've written it all. It imports random, the library of random, that gives it the ability to call rand int for random number generation. We've defined a function here that looks at the number passed in and compares it to 1, 2, or other values and returns things. So this would be similar like the magic 8-ball, and you can certainly change this and add more options in here and expand this out if you wanted to make it a little more interesting. But to simplify typing, I've just gone with a few options here. And I have, oh, a typo. Yeah, that's right now. It is certain, so we got a 1. And I can also use, I mean, this is a little more advanced, but I will show debugging here. So I put a breakpoint on that line, and I'll run it with the debugger right here. And so now I can actually, down here in the remote interpreter, I can type R and see what the value of R is. So R is a 4. And so since R is a 4, I know that the result will be unsure when I just continue running. So I'll just go tell us to resume, and the result is unsure. So I can also, with debugging, come in here and I can say R equals 1 and force change the value of R, and then resume, and it is certain. So that real quick, just what you can do with debugging there for So Chuck's asking if there's a list of common libraries that are available with the install, the ones that can be imported. There is, but it's quite large. Basically, so with Python, there's a lot of libraries that are available with it. If you pick up a Python reference or look up on Python's website, you can find a list of libraries. I'll see if I can find it real quick and share you the link. But then there's also you can use pip to install packages, and uh, I know it's in here someplace. Oh, tools, install packages with pip. So pip is the Python installed packages. I think what pip stands for. It's an acronym, and you can, if there's a library you need that isn't in here, you just go out and find it with pip and install it. Let's see if I can find a list of built-in Python. So the built-in Python libraries on the Python website we're on Python 396. There are some people, so Python is not super compatible between major versions. So some people still use 2.7 because it's the last 2.0 version, but 396 is the current version, which is what I'm using right now. And here is some of the built-in libraries that you can get to. So if I look on this list here, there's random is in the numeric and mathematical modules. But I wonder if there's a pip Python library. There probably is. Yeah, I don't see one, interestingly. So this is a great site for learning basics on things. Actually, I still use it a lot because occasionally I forget syntax on something, but it'll show you it goes into how to use pip as well. So here they're installing a library called camel case right there. So you just type pip install camel case. I'll show you how to do that real quick. Let me see if I can turn off that code completion thing that keeps popping up. Tools, options. Is it here or is it the other one? Code completion. Oh, well, there's why right there. Let's make it like that and see what that does. No, it's still too big. Yes, there we go. Huh, I wonder why that got set so large. I wonder if that was by default or if I messed something up. So now we know how to fix that problem. So, okay, I was going to show how to install Camel Case. Surprise, there is a package for Camel Case. So you see down here at the bottom, you can see that it went out and is installing Camel Case. Oh, Camel Case apparently is too old. Oh, I need to upgrade pip. Let's do that. What is my... Oh, it's... Nope. All right, let's do this. What version of, okay, we're using Python 64, but it's using the old version of pip. So let me update it real quick. Oh, Microsoft Translator. I forgot to do that today. Let me do that real quick. Okay, so there's a question here about how do we know when to use camel case versus underscore in variable naming? That is just a preference thing. Python does have a document where they make recommendations, but it's just really going to be your preference on how you're doing that. So it looks like the translation is working now. If you want to join the transcription service, that is useful, and I'll try and keep an eye on it in case it pauses again. Install. So this should upgrade pip for me. Surprised, I just installed Python, so I'm surprised it's using an old version of pip. But the example I was showing was there's a library called Camel Case that I was going to try installing via pip. So let's try doing that again. Tools, install packages with pip. Is it Python? I wonder why. I don't know if I restart this. It still has the old version of .21.2.1. Tools. Huh. Well, it doesn't like installing that package. I'm not sure why. It's not a very useful package, but I just wanted to, that would be how you would install a package. Other packages normally install fine. I'm just going to find a different. So once you would install it, you would type import and the name of it. I wonder if I can do it from the command line. Pip install. Weird. So I did tell it to upgrade pip itself. I don't know. Tools. All right, so we should be able to use camel case now. So here's how you do it. Import. We have the new library enabled camel case, and we can then use camel case to format that with humps. to change the hello world to hello world with camel case. So let's do that. We'll just copy this into the IDE. And we'll run it. And we see it change to hello world like this, lower cases, into hello world like that. And if I put it all together, let's see what that'll do. Okay, it didn't. So I guess that makes sense. It's not able to tell that those words in there. Yeah, so someone else saying that the same problem with pip locking up before. Okay, so there's a question here. What is the difference between PyScripter and Python for Delphi? That's a good question. So I'm using PyScripter right now. PyScripter is a standalone Python IDE that is a great IDE to use if you're using working with Python. Python for Delphi is a library. Here it is. Available on SourceForge that is a bridge between Python and Delphi. So this session here, I'm showing Python, but then this afternoon session, I'll be showing how to work with that bridge in order to connect between Python and Delphi. So what that allows you to do simply is it allows you to build a Delphi application that can run Python scripts, and it allows you to build Python applications that can use parts of Delphi, like the VCL or FireMonkey. So you can build a GUI application in Python using Delphi's VCL for Windows, or FireMonkey using FireMonkey from Delphi in a Python application to run on Linux, Mac OS, Windows, or in the very near future, Android is coming out for that as well. So it's just this bridge that allows you to connect between those two languages. Actually, the other thing it lets you do is from a Delphi application, you can consume any Python library. So any library you can install via pip or that's installed by default in Python, part of the Python standard library, can be used from Delphi as if it was a Delphi standard library as well. So let me give you a link to the blog post for today in case you missed it. Oops, throw the link there. There are some videos that you can go out and watch that provide a brief introduction to doing this. So you can go out and watch that video if you want to on the playlist. Oh, it's not showing this. Is it? Last week during our Python for Adult. Let's share. So that video that's embedded is actually a playlist. It has 7 videos in it. And this is a real quick, short intro to Python for Delphi. So I was going to give you the list of common libraries that I got here. Here's the Python standard library. Yes, so Python script from a Delphi application, that will be in the second session later today. I am running Windows 11 64-bit x86 right now. Python will run on pretty much any platform, and the PyScripter apparently is either specific to x86 64-bit or x86 32-bit. Doesn't like running on ARM64 yet. Windows. No, we can't see you. You're not being recorded, so don't worry about that. And oh, I thought I put the link in for the YouTube video. PyScripter apparently is there is the link for the YouTube video, which I guess at this point you'd be watching the replay. Okay, so let me go back to our Python application here. So we've done a little bit of looking at how you would do function calls, and we imported a library with pip. So the example I did earlier, I'll do another one here. Let's see. Why is that long again? What's it called? Say hello. So this is camel case here, where I'm putting the H in the middle. The other option would be I could call it this way, but at this point I'm defining my own identifier. That's for my own use. So how I format it is up to me. Okay, I think that's a bug. Let me see if I can just turn that off. Because that went back to 100. Weird. I'll put name in here. Name, and then let's say now. Oh, I was going to do like this. Sorry. We're going to say, oops. So this is going to return hello plus whatever name you pass it. Now, there's a few ways I can do this. I can say my name equals Jim, and then say my message equals say hello. Oops. Sorry, wrong syntax there. My name, and then print my message. And then when I run this, it will print hello, Jim. Hello, Jim. Now I can also do, if I want to, I can put this all in one line. So instead of breaking this out like this, in here I can just say hello, Jim. So that does the same thing as those two lines, or the three lines that were there previously. And it's kind of a taste thing, really, as far as which way you do that, which way you format it. The breaking it out into individual lines can make it clearer what's going on, or easier to debug potentially. But for some things like this, it's pretty simple and there's not a lot of complexity. So it might be easier to put it all in one line. So what I frequently will do is, if I am if something is, I'll start with writing things in one line, but then if it starts to get complex or I run into issues, then I'll break it apart into individual lines with multiple variable declarations. And that way it's easier to debug. And usually once I do that, I'll just leave it broken apart, because obviously it needs to be broken apart. So yesterday's stream is, if you go to the blog post for yesterday, you can find it. Here is the main link there, and you can jump to the individual days from there. And it stopped again with the microphone, so I started back up again. So this is, let's talk about scope really quick. So I'm going to define a function called spam, just because it's a dummy function. And inside spam, I have a variable called eggs, and I'm going to put a value of 12 in there. And then in here, I can say print spam, and it will print spam and eggs if I do this, spam. Okay, so I'll run this, or it'll say spam and 12. I guess I could do spam and 12 eggs. But what I want to show you here is right now, eggs is only in scope inside spam. Inside spam. So if I go down here and say print eggs, so first of all, notice it's not showing up in my code completion list. And if I try and run this now, we'll see it gets an error. So it printed the spam and 12 eggs, but then had an error message on this line. And the reason I had the error message is because eggs only exists in the scope of spam. Now, if I take eggs and move it out here, then it's considered to be in the global scope, and now both of those will work. So in here, it's able to find eggs because it's out there, and then here it's also able to find eggs because it's out there. It's in the global scope. So basically you can keep getting narrower and narrower scopes, and the scope, a new scope essentially is when you have indentation with Python, because Python always indents the blocks or procedures or sub-procedures. So you can only use a variable or an identifier if it's at the level of indentation you're currently at, if it's declared at that level or higher, but not lower. So hopefully that makes sense. That's a real important thing. Oh yeah, so this is the one session was going to be yesterday this is the session was going to be yesterday, is the one right now. Then the one later today was going to be today. So that's how things were moved around. Yesterday we had the tea, coffee, and code session where we talked about education and books and jobs. Hopefully we're able to join that. If not, it's available on our YouTube channel as well. So scope's a really important thing when you're writing your own code, because occasionally you'll be trying to do something and you'll be like, I have eggs defined, why can't I use it? And that's because it's in a different place. And also with this, you can redeclare eggs again. Now when I run this eggs is local here. So this one will use this eggs, whereas this one will use that eggs. So see spam and 1 eggs. And then here we have 12. You can also do this. This is interesting. I can say I want to change the global eggs to 1. Let's see. So this is, yeah. So that should let me change global eggs. We'll make it 2 because it bugs me that that's plural. And so now eggs is 2 in both places. So with this statement here, it gives me the ability to change that global value. No, there was no Python session yesterday. That's the session we have today. So the session, the session yesterday was tea, coffee, and code, which was on jobs and books and education. Today is the Python session yesterday. It was going to be yesterday because it was going to conflict with the other one. All right, so another thing that's really important is exception handling. So an exception is an unexpected condition, when something unexpected happens. So I will give you an example of an exception here. Spam (42) divided by okay, so this will oops, forget the colon. We'll take whatever number you pass and divide 42 by that and return it. So if I say print spam 2, print spam 6, print spam 0. So I can pass all those as options. The first two will work, but you can't divide by 0. So I'll run this, and we'll see that we got 12 and 7 back, but then we got an error message when we got to 42 divided by 0. And that's called an exception. An exception, like I said, is an unexpected condition. So when something happens that either cannot continue or something that you didn't code for, then that's where you get that. Oh, there's a couple questions here on this. So yes. A question about globals. What if you change it global again? Does it take the last one only? Yes. So anytime you change a variable, it takes whatever it was changed to. Sorry, let me jump back and show that really quick because that's a really important thing to get. So I will just do a simple one here without scope because we saw scope already. But if I say eggs equals 2 and print eggs, that will print 2. Eggs equals 3, print eggs, that will print 3. So the same thing with the global. Once you use global to bring it inside that scope and you change it there, it's always the last change that takes effect. So 2 and 3. Hopefully that makes sense. So what comes up here at this point is we want to be able to handle. We don't want the user of our application to see the error message. We want to be able to handle that in code. So we want to say that if you're expecting an unexpected condition, then you would. That's what we're doing here is exception handling. And so you do that by using try. So indent that because now it's in a new block, and accept. And accept, we'll see the error message we got is 0 division error. So I'm going to say, if we get 0 division error, then we will print you can't by 0. And we will return 0, just so we return something. So now if we run this, because we've told it we are now expecting that unexpected behavior, we can now have behavior we do on that. We say you can't divide by 0 and we return 0 so that it prints 0 out there. Although I'm curious, if we don't return anything, what happens? Yeah, none. So we return nothing, so it prints none back out there. And so the great thing about this is that if I have another statement after that, that one will also run 42. Whereas if I didn't have the exception handling on it, it never gets down to run the last line. So the last line should print 42, and we didn't get a chance to run that because it failed because of the exception. So exception stops your program execution, and that's annoying. Although way back in the day, exceptions used to just reboot the entire computer. So Dale's saying, well, probably a bad practice. Can you name a local variable the same as a global variable in Python? Yes. And that is a bad practice. So if you name a local variable the same as a global variable, then you will modify it locally and it won't be modified globally. So yeah, I would not, I don't recommend that. It doesn't give you any kind of warning about that. Oh, and you can, yeah, and Keenan's pointing out that you can also name an exception or check for all exceptions. So I will say that so he's saying you can do this exception, and that works. But my advice and what I say is the best practice is you should always check for the most specific exception that you're aware of. So you probably should never check for just exception, because doing so says I'm expecting all unexpected conditions. And so you could have an exception that, let's say you're out of memory, right? And then in the exception handler, you're like, I'll just keep working, assuming that's divide by 0, but actually you're out of memory and you're trying to do something when you have no more memory on the system. And so that would be problematic. Can we use exceptions as debug? So if something wrong happens, we get an error message. Yes. And so that's a really good idea, is that you want to do, you can have this log an error message, a more detailed error message of what happens to a log file, or maybe any number of other scenarios. And you can generate your own exceptions too, right? So you can say, hey, the program never should have gotten this state, so I'm going to generate an exception. And then your exception handler can then trap that exception and post it so that it is or log that so that you can then later look at an application that was running remotely or whatever and see that it was in a bad state. So yes, exactly. Yes, if you want to check all of them, correct. I think that you probably never want to check for all exceptions. Maybe your application has one global exception handler that is going to check for all exceptions, and its only purpose is to say things are really messed up, let's save and exit, right? Because at that point, if you're not handling specific exception situations, you really probably don't want to trap those. So there's a great question here from Mohammed. Says, why not just test for 0 before dividing? That actually is a really good idea. So you could yes, you could do that. So actually I'll do this and say, I'll take rid of that. And we can say, if divide by equals 0, and we would else. So like that, you could do this, and this will also do the exact same behavior as before. So I think the best practice is you want to always check your values to make sure they are what you expect them to be, but it's also a good idea to handle exceptions that you're aware may occur as well also. Now, in this situation, we can totally prevent the divide by zero from happening because it happens for a very specific scenario. But there may be other times that you want to do it the other way. So you have both, but it is a really good practice to always, if you have input, right, whether the input be from the user or in this case is input to your sub procedure, validate that it is in the that is what you expect in the ranges you expect, that it is valid input. What's the difference between declaring global variable outside a function and inside a function? Is it the same? So if you use the global keyword, then it is the same. Declaring it outside the function lets you declare it globally without using the global keyword. So global keyword is a way to make what would be a local variable global. Can you create an exception tier from specific to general? Yes. So let me go back to that. So you can say, actually, I'm not positive the syntax for this. I think I just do except. Okay, that worked. And so if I let me see if I can, let's see. I think it's raise. Yeah, that's not right. Let me just look at the syntax really quick on this to make sure I get it right, since my guess was wrong. Yeah, it says raise. Oh, I spelled it wrong. It should be raise exception. So now, each time it's saying things are really bad. So I could say if divide by equals 1. So if we decide for some reason we should never have division by 1, then we see now it says you can't divide by 0, returns none. And then if it gets a 1, then we raise just a generic exception, which that is the root exception that all exceptions descend from. And or all exceptions are also, so 0 division error is also an exception. So if I did this the other way around, then you see it traps this first because 0 division error is also an exception. Sorry, that's a little more complicated. That's getting into polymorphism, but you get the idea. Yes. Yes. So if you, what Kian's saying is that if you do as E here, then things are really bad. And then I can say, and then actually print out the error. Oh, I need to put this as, can I do that? I think I can do that. Yep, it's just an exception. So if it was a more specific exception, I could display If I put it here, it would display it as zero division error. Yes, you could use PyTest, just doing some basic stuff here for this. What if you want to test for two specific exceptions? So yeah, you could have another except, I don't know, overflow error. Oops. Much, right? And so then that would let us test for two different errors, two different specific errors, and then trap all errors there. What is the order of exception handling? So if you look in the documentation on, let's see if this has the, yeah, it does. So I'm not sure where you'd find. So you'd have to look at the way the different exceptions stack and what order they go in. I'm not sure offhand what that would be. But generally, you're probably most likely. Actually, if we look, let me look here. Let's see if it's. Most exceptions are not incredibly. Okay, here we go. The following exceptions are subclasses of OS error. So you could trap OS error, and that would trap all of these exceptions, or you could trap blocking IO error. So if you wanted to differentiate blocking IO error, you would say except blocking IO error, do this, and then you would say have the next one would be except OS error, and that would trap all others. Whereas if you put OS error first, then it would also trap the blocking IO errors. So that's how you would differentiate them, is because based on which ones are subclass from others. Hopefully that makes sense without being too deep or complicated. All right, good. Looks like it did. Let me make sure. All right. The microphone turned off again and turned off, the mic stays on. So it's on again for the translation. Let me go back to our book, our program we're working from here. Let's see, wouldn't they all be raised? It would be in the order they're tested from. Yes. So if you raise if a blocking IO error is raised by something, then that the blocking IO error is both a blocking IO error, an OS error, and an exception. So it's all three of those at the same time. So depending on how you test it, right? So if you say except, when you say this, you're saying except, is the exception a zero division error? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no? So if you say except exception first, then everything is an exception. It just does that and it stops going down the rest of the checks. But if instead you tested to say is, or you say except blocking IO error and tested it, then you've tested the most specific case possible and found the error message and handled the specific error message. But then you could also say after that, except OS error and then except exception and handle the more generic ones that weren't a blocking IO error. So the idea is you want to check for the most specific exception case first. Is there a representation for not a number in Python? There is. I think it's just NaN, but let me make sure. Come on, don't fail me now. Look here. Yeah, so you have infinity and nan. So I could return. What was it? Yeah. Oh, it must be defined in be math. Nope. So I have to find out what library that's defined in. Built-in functions. Oh, C math. Complex math. Nope. Okay. Now it should work. Yep. So you can do, there's a way you can change, when you do your import statements, you can change so you don't have to scope them like this. But honestly, I think that scoping them like this is a good idea because then you're always very sure where you're getting things from and what's going on. It's over there. Okay. The questions are great. I'm happy to keep answering questions for everybody. So so exception is the most general exception, while zero division error, overflow error, etc., are more specific exceptions. So I'm going to paste in this more involved code instead of writing off by hand. I'll run it and then we will discuss it. So you see it's creating this cool zigzag pattern. And then I thought there was a while true. Oh, you have to hit the escape key. All right. Yeah, Control C is supposed to terminate it, but it's not working for some reason. Except keyboard interrupt is, so it's doing while true. So this is a loop that'll run forever. And then we have an indentation. We increase the indentation here and keep track of whether we're increasing or decreasing indentation to change the indentation. And it should exit on keyboard interrupt, but it's not. I wonder, I bet you it's because the I'm doing it through the interpreter window here and it's trapping the Control C probably. Let's try one more time. And yeah, it's trapping the Control C, so it's not actually getting to it. If I ran it from the command line, I can do that. Let's do that. That's a good thing to do anyway. Zigzag. And then Control C. There we go. And so I could actually put in here as well a print by. So it's not just terminating because I hit Control C. It's terminating because I hit Control C, but it is giving me the ability to handle that exception, the keyboard interrupt, and do exit gracefully, if you will. When do we encounter NaN value? To overcome NaN value is a certain rule or principle that would bring the result from a floating point or integer. So NaN is not a number, and it would be so. If you're working with complex math and you get something back, so technically zero, if you divide something by zero, you could get back NaN. NaN is a valid result. Well, no, you just can't divide by zero. Well, some mathematicians would argue that. I've seen some pretty convincing cases for what divide by zero should be. But unless you're working in complex math, you probably don't have to worry about getting back NaN, not a number. But if you are, then if you're doing complex math, then you'll want to be able to deal with the fact that sometimes a number is infinity, or sometimes a number is not a number, or there probably are indications for imaginary numbers and stuff like that. But generally, if you're not dealing with complex math, it's not something you want to use. So Keenan just shared some code that he had for that displays messages. Yeah, so that's a useful one there, that just showing the capturing multiple error messages. Yes, so PyScripter is a free IDE for Python, correct. It's sponsored by Embarcadero. There's other ones out there. I really like PyScripter. It has a good level of integration with Python and makes it easy to work with usually. Okay. Good stuff. So I'm going to keep going here. So we're going to look at lists now. So I can make a list right here in the interactive window. That's a list. It contains 3 items. Sometimes it's referred to as arrays in other languages, but Python, everything is just a list. They may have arrays separately. I don't think so, but yeah, it's a list. So a list is just contains things. So hold on. It can contain Jim, Bob, and it can also contain, it can be mixed items as well. So I could have Jim 3, Bob 25, Alice 42.0. Okay. And so by actually putting a dot in there, .0, even though that's the same as 42, I've now set it to floating point value. You can also then store this list. And I can say spam 0, and that will return Jim, or spam 1 will return 3. etc. Python for Delphi is also sponsored by Embarcadero. Yes. But they are open source projects. So since I'm referencing the individual elements of that, if I do try to reference something beyond the length of it, like say 100, I'll get an error message. So an exception, we get an index error. Now the solution to that would be to check to see the lengths of it, right, to see if it is available. Another thing you can do is I can actually do a negative. So if I do -1, so let me just display spam. So what do you think will happen if I say spam -1? Do you think it's an error message or it gave me nothing? Let's see. I thought it was going to do. Alice. So spam -1, 42. Why did it give me? I must have had. I probably had. I didn't type. I must have had something in my keyboard buffer or hit something wrong key or something. Yeah. So the negative numbers start from the end and work way back, and so that way it's a way that you can reverse the index because there's not really. You can't really have a negative index of an item. So one way you can prevent yourself from going beyond the number of items in the list is you can check for the length by doing len spam. And that will tell me that there's 6 items in it. So that means I want to go from 1 to 5 because the first item is item 0. It's 0 indexed. So 0 is a number. If you want to add something to spam, you can say spam equals spam plus I am new, like this. And then that adds, so if I check the length of spam, spam is now 7. And if I just get spam, we see spam now has the 7th item in it. You can have multi-dimensional arrays as well. Just, let's see, that would be spam equals Jim 42, oh, 32, sure, I'll take it. Bob 20. So then I can say spam, if I say spam 0, that's going to give me the first. So you can think of it, it's an array within an array. So if I say spam 0, that gives me Jim 32. And if I say spam 00, that gives me just Jim. And you can, usually you're going to have the same number of elements in every array, but if you wanted to, you could have like that. And then the third element in the parent array only doesn't have a subarray. So yeah, it's very flexible. Right, so negative would choose from right to left. It should print 42.0. Yes, yep. Can you put, so if you want to join the afternoon session, if you're in this session, you're already registered for that one. It's the same link. You'll just use that. So can we append list 1 of an array to list 2 of an array without using any library? Yes. So I'm not using any library right now. Let's say I have spam 1 or I'll say spam 2 equals hello world, and I'll say spam 3 equals spam plus spam 2. And now we'll look at spam 3. We'll see now it's combined those two arrays together. So array concatenation you can totally do without using any extra libraries. As far as clearing it, you can just clear it. You can say spam like that. Now spam is empty. Yeah, so exactly. Let me do a little program here to show handling an error or dealing with a list that's of. So let's say you've received a list of items. I'll just copy this one down here I already have to save myself some typing. And I could do a, and let's say I have an index of 4. So I wanted to print spam index. All right. Now, if I run this, it's going to give me 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it'll give me Alice. But let's say the index I was given was too big. I get an error message. And so I would say if IDX is less than length spam, then print it, else print no can do boss. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I make this 5, we get 42. If I make it 6, no can do. So here's a question of when would you recommend Python versus Delphi? That's a good question. Python is a scripting language, which is useful for when you're doing a one-off, something you want to just do once. You don't want to have code that's maintained, whereas Delphi is a compiled programming language. So generally, if you're doing like some sort of simple command line function or something, scripting languages are great for situations when you're going to be changing it frequently. Whereas a compiled programming language is better for situations when you want to have something that's going to be used more often than it's changed. So there are some things that Python's really good for, but the fact that you can use any Python library from Delphi as if it was a Delphi library kind of erases some of those benefits that Python has. But generally, I think Python's a good choice if you are having a scripting language that is, like I said, something you're going to maintain, that you're going to be continuously editing the script and making changes to it, and you don't want to have to keep going through the extra step of compiling it. Can I convolve with different dimensions of arrays? Not sure what your question is, Peter. I'm not sure what is this a typo or what your question is. one also advantage is that a compiled program most of the time is faster than a script because a script is interpreted. Now there are some fuzzy cases around that. So typically, and actually I've talked to some customers that use Python for some things, and then when they need to, they rewrite the programs from Python into Delphi. So they can have Delphi running some Python code, and then when they're running that code often enough that it's becoming a bottleneck, then they rewrite the code in Delphi to get better performance. Are editing a script frequently. It makes sense to use Python. What happens with index -10? Oh, that's a good point. -10. We get an error message. So we need to trap for both those. See, that's Thomas, that's thinking. If index is IDX is greater than what did I mess up here? One second. Let's see. Operator for logical and is and. So okay, I guess I want me to do it like this. I had an extra parenthesis someplace. Oh, yep, my parentheses were unbalanced. There we go. No can do, boss. So, yeah, you need to check. Be careful about that. How do I write greater than or equal in case I want to print out item number 6 on the list? So greater than or equal would be like that. That's greater than equal. I'm not sure if I may have misunderstood your question there. I'm going to put a link in here to this W3 Schools Python because this is a really good starting place as well if you're learning Python. Oops, wrong thing. Some good references, and they have some exercises and stuff you can go through as well, some tutorial type stuff. If I have a dimension of 4 by 3 for an array, and the other array with a different dimension, convolving mean a mask to a bigger array. Yes, so because Python, it's not really arrays, you can combine they're lists, and a list can contain lists. And so a 4 by 3 list is a list that is 4 long, that each item in that list is a list of 3 long list. So you can combine those together. Now, if you're wanting to get into like matrices and matrix arithmetics and stuff like that, there are libraries for that. NumPy is a library for that, but that's gives you the ability to do functions on an entire matrix. Saying is, let's see, saying we won't get, if there's 6 items in the list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we won't be able to get 42 because, oh, you're right. So this should be less than equal to here. Off by 1 error. Oh, wait. Oh, because it's 0 based. So that's why. Because it is 0 based, this is the 6th item, but its index is 5. Okay. So index is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So even though it's the 6th item, its index is 0. So this actually will let us go -6, which will give an exception. Or not. Let's see. -5. All right. Let me balance this right with parentheses. If index is greater than spam, oh, that's the problem. Put that in the wrong spot. Bob. Okay, so now let's see if this does. -6, then can I do -5? Is 3. So I can't get Jim. So then this should be -1. So then this should be able to go Jim. But it's weird though, because then the negative, yeah, because you can't have -0. So the other index, the negative index is, my mouse go, would be -6, -5, -4, -3, -2, -1. So 25 is both positive and -3 for indexes. Interesting. Not going to get into matrices today, Peter. Sorry. Maybe I can try and do some. I'd like to do some more. If there's a lot interest in this, let me know, and I'll do a further series on working with Python. Is it possible to create an application in Delphi with support for modules or extensions made in Python? Yes, that's what Python for Delphi does. Is Python for Delphi gives you a complete bridge between Python and Delphi, so that Delphi can consume anything for Python and vice versa. So index -1. Okay, that would reduce index by 1. So if index was -6, it would make it into -7, which would be out of bounds. If index was so just yeah. Actually, I'll do a quick straw poll. There is a raise hand feature in here, and if you would like to have more streams, more tutorials on Python, raise your hand, and I will plan some more in the future, and we can do some more things with Python to dive into looking at other use cases and other scenarios and other more advanced content as well. Can you write Python code in Delphi? Something like a sim? No, you can't embed it in Delphi. If you want an example of a quick example of Python for Delphi, if you go to the blog post, you can see it links to a couple from there. Let's grab the blog post. But that is what I'll be doing in the next session here after a short break. One from here, and we. All right, not sure. All right, I'll take a look at your code here, Keenan. Oops, that's not the code. Try again. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is either. Interesting. I'll run it, see what happens, I guess. All right, let's see what the poll looks like. Quite a few people are interested in some more Python content, so we'll definitely plan some more in the future streams. Yes, machine learning is a big area of application for Python. The Python for Delphi actually works with C++ Builder as well. I think I know we have some content showing about how to do that, and I will try to make sure that's on the mailing list if it's or on the playlist if it's not already. Yes, so C++ Builder can do, as far as I know, I don't think there's any limitations. I think you can do everything with C++ Builder and Python combined as you can with Delphi and Python. So absolutely. So a couple other things here about one place this becomes really useful is you can use for loops on it. So I can say for IDX in range of, so range is going to be the start and stop. And in this case, I want to say len spam. Oops. And then print spam dx. Oops, I got the colon again. And so that prints each item in the list. So range generates a range, a start and a stop. And if you just pass the end of what you want it to stop at, which in this case is the length of this, then it does from that many 0 to that -1. So it's perfect for doing that. You can also do, let's see if we can do this. We can say for v in spam and print spam. No, it doesn't like that. No, it did like it. or print V, sorry. So this is an iterator. It iterates through each value in spam. And so V is each value in spam. So that's an even shorter way of doing that. Let's see. And then we can also use, I can say if Jim in spam, right? Else no semicolon. So I see you. If I change this to lowercase j, then it's can't find it. Nope. And likewise, you can do in, and you can also do not in. So let's go back to lowercase j, and then we'll say, I see you. But if I go uppercase j, that is there, it will say not there. Okay. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. I think it's a good place to stop. Looking at the questions here, I think, so I'm not going to get into matrix arithmetic today. That'd be cool. Like I said, we'll try and do that in the future. But hopefully this was useful. Get your feet wet with working with Python and PyScripter. There are other Python IDEs out there. PyScripter is one that is free that I personally like. That's one of the reasons Embarcadero is now sponsoring it. It is written in Delphi, and hopefully you'll join us this afternoon for the Python for Delphi session, where we will look at combining the two, Python and Delphi, and I'll be showing Delphi, but it will work also with C++ Builder. All right, great. I'm glad you found this useful. I appreciate everybody joining us, and I will see you all in the afternoon session. Take care. Bye.